and gentlemen, live from the 19th century at the heart of Her Majesty's Empire in the City of London, it's the Charles Dickens Show. Please will you welcome your host, is Dickens.
Thank you, good evening and welcome. This week on my show, we're going to be investigating a subject which has been close to my heart for many a year. Grrrr! Let me tell you, this is the one that's really guaranteed to get my goat. And if you knew my goat, ladies and gentlemen, you would not want to get on the wrong side of him. Now listen to this. Did you know that as we stand here today in Victorian Britain, 80% of all children under the age of 16 years old are in full-time work? And in our coal and iron mines, these children, both boys and girls, are starting work at the age of 5. Isn't that terrible? Child labour! 2 words which should never have been joined together. Well, tonight, ladies and gentlemen, they shall be rent asunder. And I aim to strike the heaviest blow in my power for these poor, unfortunate creatures. Oh, yes. Now, we're going to be visiting one of the country's so-called ragged schools and talking to some poor children who are receiving at least some kind of education. And we'll let them put their points across to a man who has dedicated his life to helping them and thousands like them. Lord Shaftesbury is in the studio, ladies and gentlemen. Did you bring your hammer, Lord Shaftesbury?
Yes, I left mine out the back, Charles.
I hope it's a big one. But first up, we're joined by our roving reporter, the lovely Nellie Trent. What have you been up to, Nellie?
Well, I've been interviewing children who do some of the dirtiest and worst paid jobs in towns across the country. What we discovered was that their plight was so desperate that they would turn their hand to anything. John Lobb has been working as a mudlark on the banks of the Thames near Execution Dock for almost 3 years. John, what is it exactly that you're looking for?
Coal, bones, iron and rope.
Where do they come from?
Waste from the ships which is repairing and fitting.
What's the best thing that you've ever found?
Copper nails, and they fetch a good price. I got one of them through my foot last winter. Some people find saws and hammers while falling overboard, but I never did yet. I only shattered.
While John is searching the muddy banks of the river, just a few miles away, Sally Denlow is heading to market to buy supplies. Sally and the other watercress sellers pick up their wares and then strike out in different directions with their baskets under their arms.
I'm very good at bargaining. They can't take me in. The woman tries to give me a small handful of watercresses. I say, I ain't taking that. And I go to the next basket and so on, all around.
And how much do you earn if you sell all your basket?
Usually it's threepence.
And what can you buy with threepence?
Pint of milk. Like one day, I earn 1 shilling and 6pence. And the creases only cost me the 6pence.
How old are you, Sally?
I'm not a child. I'm 11 years old. They're so much younger than me out here. Some can barely walk. Don't know how their mums can let them sell.
Do many of the little children cry because the work's hard and they're cold? Do you ever feel like crying?
But there's no use crying, is it? It gets a bit cold sometimes. Lucky I've got these. Some children around here don't even have shoes.
Where did you get your slippers?
A gent gave them to me. He came here one day, asked for some cresses. I gave him the cresses and he said to wait here. So I waited here and he brought me back these. I didn't steal them. Stealing's wrong, miss, and I would never do it. If I'd done it, Mummy would beat me.
Here on the riverbank, where John Lobb is taking his lunch, I asked him whether he had ever been tempted to steal.
One of my mates was caught lifting coal for barge and got sent to household correction for 7 days. Like it better than mudlarking.
Why is that?
They gave him a jacket, stocking and shoes, and he was never afraid of going to bed without a meal, not like normal.
Would you do it?
Well, he says as he's going to try it on again in the winter.
But would you steal?
Nah, I ain't no thief.
Over on the other side of town, I found 9-year-old Betsy Bathurst, who's a pure finder. Pure finding is an essential part of the leather making industry, and Betsy here has agreed to tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I come up before a local magistrate, and he told me to go and gather Pure, and then he buy it off me. He's a tanner, you see. Makes leather.
So Pure is... Oh, watch out. Watch your step.
Well spotted. You're a natural. Oh, lovely bit of Pure, that.
So Pure is...
Well, it's dung, innit? Dog smuck. We put it in a bucket like this one. See? It's good to have a lid on it. Because then people don't mind you so much. There we go.
So what do they actually do with the Pure?
They rub it into leather. For gloves and such, like for the rich ladies. Like that pair you've got on, I expect. I think they use it to clean it, to purify it. And that's why it's called Pure. I've got a glove in myself, see? But I usually just use my hand without the glove to pick stuff up.
Why?
It's easier to get a good grip on it. And you can wash your hands better than you'd be able to wash a glove at the end of the day.
But doesn't it smell?
Depends what they've been eating, I suppose. Some fellas clean out the kennels, so they make more money. Although, if you ask me, that Pure ain't such good material.
What, it can make a difference what sort of Pure?
Of course, it matters very much what it looks like. Some tanners prefer the dry stuff, and others like it to be dark and moist. Like this. Let me tell you a secret. If you've got a bucket of wet stuff, like this, and they want it dry and chalky, then you can mix it in with a bit of mortar from the old walls. You pick the mortar out, like this, and then you mix it in like... You have a go.
Oh no, you're fine, thanks.
Go on, it ain't gonna hurt ya. No, don't bother with your glove. Just get your hands in. Look. If they caught us at it, we'd be in trouble, mind. But it's good to know the tricks, innit? No, I saw yesterday. A fella calling himself a street orderly. Came across him on one of my best patches. You can always find some good Pure. Clearing up the muck he was. I ask you, how's a girl meant to make an honest living? They go around clearing up all the Pure before I can get to it.
In each of these trades, there are hundreds of children working every day, trying to make just enough money to ward off starvation and the workhouse. Some of these youngsters told me that they do sometimes attend a ragged school, but they can see no way out of the desperate poverty into which they've been born. This is Nellie Trent for the Charles Dickens Show.
Well, proof of the old adage there, where there's muck, there's brass. Well done for getting stuck in, Nellie, and thank you once again for another splendid report.
That's my pleasure, Charles.
It's very important that we don't forget about these young innocents, isn't it, Lord Shaftesbury?
Oh, certainly. We shouldn't just think about the children who are working in the factories and the mills. We also need to remember the children that we pass every day on the street.
Quite so. Now, let me tell you a thing, friends. I visited a factory up in Yorkshire where it seemed to me that the children were being literally worked to death. And that goes for the whole of the country. In the past 3 years, 1,287 fingers have been torn off by our factory machines. That's a lot of fingers. Nearly 1,500 bones have been broken in these workplaces, and over 100 people have been killed. Why do we talk about such horrible things? Because they exist, and their existence should be clearly known. And that's the reason I thought it might be interesting to bring one of the factory men responsible for this ongoing misery onto our show, ladies and gentlemen. And Mr... What? Why can't we mention... Apparently, ladies and gentlemen, the man wishes to remain anonymous. Are we surprised? Well, let's see what he has to say for himself.
Would you like to be outside on a day like this, when you could be in the mill, safe and warm? Well, safe. Well, of course, I'd like to be able to pay them all more, but it wouldn't be sound business. I mean, if I'm out of business, then they're out of work. The cotton trade is worth nearly £40 million to this country. The industry has to come before the individual. Every morning I stand on the bridge between my garden and the mill, and I see them all coming down the lane in their clogs for the morning shift, and they all look up at me and they wave and they shout, "Good morning, Mr. Sir." The The noise is terrible, but they're not allowed to talk anyway, so actually the racket from the machines is no bad thing. I mean, if a child comes up to me and says, they're 16, and I say, well, you look more like you're 10, and they say, well, I look young for my age. How am I supposed to know how old the children are anyway? They brought in birth certificates in 1837, but it's not as easy as that. The thing about children is they're small, you see. What we have some of them doing is working as piecers, which means they run up and down beside the loom, and when a thread snaps, they grab the two ends and reattach them as quick as they can. They really do scamper about. We think they can do as many as 20 miles in a day. It's a bit like a game to them, hopscotch or tag. But it isn't a game, because if they get their timing wrong, they're likely to get sucked into the machine and crushed to death. Horribly. I mean, I do get do-gooders coming up to me and saying, Mr. Nice tune, that, isn't it? One of my favourites. I built them all houses, of course, and they're very nice they are too. They've even got lavatories, and they share them with the neighbours. I mean, that's what community's all about, isn't it? Sharing. They're my family. I'm the father. I don't mean literally. But sometimes the father has to be strict. Now, does that make me a bad person? Because if it does, then I hold my hands up and I say, yes, I am bad.
Telegram for you, Mr. Dugdale.
Apologies to Mr. Dugdale there, who wishes to remain anonymous. Now, it's time to meet my very special guest, a tireless champion of children's rights who has dedicated his life in Parliament to that cause. Will you feel the love in the room, ladies and gentlemen, as I introduce the one, the only, Lord Shaftesbury!
Thank you, Charles. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you on the show. We really are. But listen, I have to tell you, we're all rather confused here on the Charles Dickens Show because we haven't got the foggiest idea what we should call you.
I was born Anthony Ashley Cooper.
So it's Lord Ashley.
Not quite, you see. I gave up the Lord Ashley when my father...
Lord Shaftesbury.
Yes, when he died, of course, I then became...
Lord Shaftesbury.
Yes, that's right. But, of course, my father was also the Earl of Shaftesbury.
So you are the Earl of Shaftesbury.
Yes, the 7th Earl.
Hold on one moment. Indulge me, kind sir. I think this is going to work a lot better for you.
Oh.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, that's quite excellent. Thank you.
This is just for the duration of the show, you understand? Of course, tomorrow, who knows what the heck we're going to have to call him. Now, if I may be serious for a moment, I want to talk to you about that 10-hour act. Now, this is a bill that was meant to reduce the number of hours that a child could be permitted to work.
Yes, to 10. You see, we feel that a child should not be allowed to work more than 10 hours a day.
Now, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, well, we introduced the Act before Parliament, but sadly it was rejected.
And what went wrong?
Yeah, well, you see, there's a lot of opposition to it from factory owners, from powerful politicians who feared, quite wrongly, that this Act would mean them losing a lot of money.
So what happened next?
Well, then, of course, you see, the government realised that something had to be done, and so then they introduced their own Factory Act later the same year.
Phew! So we got there in the end?
Yes. And, well, no.
No?
No.
What happened this time?
Well, you see, the government appointed so few inspectors to police the new laws that the 5-year-olds were all back at their machines in no time at all.
So how many inspectors did the government appoint?
4.
4? Across the entire length and breadth of the country?
Yeah.
Where's my hammer?
This is going to be quite the long haul, I'm afraid, Charles.
You have the patience of Job, sir. You really do. Now, when we knew you were coming on the show, we organised a little treat for you. Now, people at home will know that Lord Shaftesbury here, he started the Ragged Schools Union back in 1844. Now, we're going to be talking to some of the pupils in one of these classrooms in just a few moments. And before we do, explain for us, if you would, why are they called ragged schools?
Because many of the pupils have nothing better to wear than rags.
It's as simple as that. But these schools aren't schools as you and I would know them.
No, many of the classrooms are in ordinary homes. One of the first that was set up by Mr. John Pounds in Portsmouth, who began teaching the pupils in his boot mender's shop after hours.
Now these ragged schools have sprung up in warehouses and all kinds of buildings all over the country.
Yes, it's inspiring. You see, this organisation is the kind of thing that gets me out of bed in the morning. Children are the future, and the future hopes of any country lies with the character and education of its children.
So education is the key.
Oh, absolutely, and you've got to get them when they're young. You see, for as the sapling has been bent, so will it grow.
Beautiful. Now let's hear from some of those children who are the future of our world right now.
If I didn't work, then I couldn't afford to eat anything. I don't want to be living like this all my life, so that's why I want an education.
Now, this is a real bugbear of mine. Their circumstances should not deprive those who are willing to learn. Of course, I accept that some families need their children to go out to work in order to survive, so there's no easy answer, I'm afraid.
This is a huge expectation of a child, though, isn't it? To come to school after a long day's work.
Oh, yes, of course, it's not ideal, but at least this child has now within his reach some sort of education.
My father wouldn't send me to school because he said we didn't have no money and said I should be working rather than coming here, even in the nights. But my sister brings me after work. She said it's a bit better to be hungry now than poor all your life.
Well, they shouldn't have to go without food in order to go to school. But an education is, without doubt, one of the best ways of freeing children from poverty. If a boy can learn to read and add his numbers, this is a way to him getting a better job. But it certainly sounds like she has a very wise sister.
I work every day sticking labels on Blackingtons down at the old Ungford stairs. But I want to be a writer someday. So he comes down here to learn how to write neat and proper.
I recognise that factory. That's exactly where I started out as a 12-year-old boy sticking labels on tins. I was that boy. Better looking, of course, but that shouldn't hold him back. Keep writing, young lad, and may the cares of today put food on your table tomorrow. Well, I'm afraid that's about all we have time for. Shaft.
Dickens.
It's been a pleasure and a privilege to have you on our show. It really has. I'm sure there are children out there across the country who would like to thank you from the bottom of their hearts for all the wonderful work you've done and are continuing to do on their behalf. Now, I believe that you're due in Parliament right after this, aren't you?
Yes, yes.
Will you promise me one thing?
What's that?
Will you wear your badge? And take this with you, in case you meet any posh politicians that need a little extra persuasion. Lord Shaftesbury, everybody! Well, that about wraps it up. But before we leave, I'd like to leave you with this little thought. A day spent wasted on others is never a day wasted on yourself. Get to it! Good night, and God bless you all!